Hey, everybody, welcome to the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Dan Lobby with Mary Kay Cabot, a Hey Mary Kay edition of the podcast with questions from our Football Insider subscribers. Mary Kay, you asked me before we came on, did we get any good questions? And I've got to say, when I was going through these questions today, and with just all the Kirk Cousins stuff that has been going on, I feel like Browns fans are back. I feel like they have sort of come out of this 3-14 haze. They're focused on the draft. They're focused on all the Kirk Cousins conspiracy theories and arguing about Kirk, arguing about Kenny Pickett. I feel like with this batch of questions and social media, it just feels like Browns fans are back. Like they're geared up and ready to go.
Well, I'll tell you what, there is plenty of content to chew on, right? It's unbelievable what's going on with this football team and just all the chatter about the quarterbacks. And it was kind of Kenny Pickett week, and we've got Kirk Cousins, and you just wrote a nice column about that went up today. And so there's a lot going on. There's a lot for Browns fans to get frustrated about, to get worried about, but also to get excited about. The draft hasn't happened yet. And so everybody's looking at this like, oh, well, Kenny Pickett's going to be starting the season. We don't know if Kenny Pickett's starting the season. Yes, there is a chance that he could start the season, but there's also a chance that someone else could start the season, a rookie perhaps. So there's a whole lot going on, and the next 3 weeks is going to be very, very interesting.
All right, well, that's where we're going to start is with the quarterbacks, obviously, and potential quarterback options. So this question comes from Christian in Hudson. Hey, Mary Kay, do the statements made by the Haslams, Andrew Berry, and Kevin Stefanski at the owners' meetings, and especially by the Haslams, indicate a possibility that the Browns will wait until the 2026 draft to select a quarterback in the first round? Given the fairly close relationship between the Haslams and the Manning family, would they potentially target Arch Manning instead of a quarterback in this draft?
Well, as we've talked about so many times before, you can't really put your eggs in that basket, not knowing where you're going to be picking, not knowing how high of a selection that you will have next year. It would be tricky to try to get up to number one or number two. And that's why I keep coming back to the fact that they've got the number 2 overall pick right now. I think if it were me, I would be finding the best quarterback that I can find in this draft and taking him at number 2 and building around him, bring him into the environment that you have right now, bolster the roster with some more weapons, and riding off into the playoffs in a year or two. So I do think that that's what they need to do. I don't think they can wait and count on anything great happening next year in that regard. If you do have to wait for your quarterback, then I don't know that you can count on it coming in the draft. You might have to think about trying to trade for a quarterback or hoping that one of these veterans shakes free again and you jump in maybe with a little bit more gusto than you did this year. So I do think that that they will end up with a rookie quarterback out of this draft and someone that they believe in and someone that will probably start games for them this year.
I did find it interesting, though, that Jimmy did just kind of come out and say, like, hey, if the guy's not there this year, we'll wait and do it next year. Essentially, I thought that was at least interesting that he said that. It's almost like he was giving Andrew and his staff cover if they just don't like one of these guys, or if they really want Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, instead of taking a quarterback at number 2. I just, why do you think Jimmy took that tact when he talked to you guys?
I think he's trying to take the pressure off of everyone and everything. I think he's trying to temper expectations for the season. I think he's trying to temper expectations for a rookie quarterback. I think he's trying to tamp down expectations for his GM and his coach. I think he's just trying to keep everything a little bit more chill coming off of 3-14. I don't think they want any talk of playoffs or Super Bowl or anything like that right now. I think he's trying to just dial it back, pump the brakes on a bunch of different things, and not get anybody's hopes up way sky high that everyone's disappointed this season. I think they want to exceed expectations if they can.
Yeah, so well, especially after a number of years where they haven't been able to do that. Obviously, a couple years ago they made the playoffs, but the 2 years prior they didn't. Last year, of course, they go 3-14. So the Haslams have kind of been burnt before by high expectations. And if they are taking a rookie quarterback, we've talked about this. Maybe that guy comes in and he's a CJ Stroud type or a Jaden Daniels, and he changes your future right away. Or maybe it takes a little time. Maybe that first year's a little rocky. Caleb Williams is a guy that obviously there was a lot going on in Chicago in his rookie year. His coach got fired in the middle of the season, but that team didn't have a ton of success, but they aren't just giving up on him. It's these rookies and the years they come in all different shapes and sizes. So you just never know. You could get a complete immediate game changer, or you could get a guy that it might take a season for him to kind of find his footing.
That's exactly right. And the key here is the fact that they might not know how that's going to go until they get their player into the building, till they see how he assimilates the new offense, until they get him out on the grass and see how it looks. So I do think that they have to exercise a little bit of patience here, and that's why they're talking up Kenny Pickett, because depending on who they do draft at quarterback, this guy might be ready to throw in right away. He might not be ready at all in the first season. So it's going to be very interesting. And at this point, they are telling us, Andrew's telling us, Kevin's telling us that they don't know which quarterback that they would take at number 2 if they decide to go quarterback at number 2. They don't know yet. And I don't know if I really believe that. I'm very skeptical at this time of year about anything that I hear. So I find it a little hard to believe that they don't know if they would take Shador or not. Um, and I guess they have to couch it a little bit because they don't even know who the Tennessee Titans are going to take at number 1 overall. They really don't know that for sure. What if the Titans surprise everybody and take Shador? Or what if they trade down and the Giants are madly in love with Shador and they take him at number 1? So you cannot exactly come out and say what you think you might do there. I understand why they're doing what they're doing. They really don't know exactly what is going on ahead of them at number 1 yet. And I think they are still doing their diligence. But I would have to think that on some level, they're going quarterback with their first pick. That's just what I keep coming back to. And I know that most of the nation and most of the experts in the country are off of that scent by now, but I'm not. I'm not off of it. And it's not because I have any inside intel on this. It's just that just like you do, we cover this team on a regular basis. We're there every single day. And I don't want to miss the elephant in the middle of the room, and that is they've got the number 2 pick and they need a quarterback, and there are good quarterbacks in this draft. And I'm just keeping it that simple right now.
And sometimes that's what it is. We talked about it a little bit on yesterday's pod. Like sometimes you just have to look at what's in front of you. And who is your starting quarterback this year for the Cleveland Browns? Well, right now it's Kenny Pickett. And they could talk up Kenny Pickett all they want, and maybe Kenny Pickett becomes the next Sam Darnold. But that can't be your plan. So it just tells you that if they haven't fixed that position in any sort of long-term fashion, or even like an immediate, we feel good about this guy starting every game next year. It tells you they're either drafting a guy or they feel like they're going to land Kirk Cousins after the draft. So, I mean, it kind of just, I don't know. To me, sometimes you have to look through what's being said and what's being floated out there and just kind of look at what's in front of you and say, this is kind of what it feels like, just based on what I'm seeing on this roster and what this team has done this offseason.
And the other thing, Dan, and you know what, maybe we can rack our brains and try to think of some examples of this, but I'm really trying to think of a wide receiver, or, Travis Hunter's different because he is a two-way player and actually a full-time two-way player at cornerback and receiver. So he falls into a different bucket or category all of his own. But I'm trying to think of a non-quarterback who has completely 100% transformed a football team when he comes into the team. And I don't know. I mean, can you think of anybody that has actually done that, transformed the team to the point where he has been the difference maker? I mean, the one player that I could think of right now is like Saquon Barkley. Really seems like he helped transform the Eagles, but they were already a pretty talented football team that needed sort of that final piece to pull everything together. I'm talking about a normal football team with a above average roster, some pretty good positions, where a receiver or even an edge rusher. So let's talk Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter came into that football team and put them over the top.
Yeah, well, and the Barkley thing is interesting because obviously the Giants took a ton of heat for letting him walk. But had he been in New York this year, the Giants weren't going to win the Super Bowl. Like they might
Right.
not have even made the playoffs, and he could have had the exact same year. So I think I hate to call him a luxury item. He transformed that Eagles offense, but that was because that Eagles offense was built for him to kind of slide into and be dominant. Um, I, I mean, I was trying to think as they were running back, if we go all the way back to like you'd have to go back to the early 2000s or something, right? When the game was just totally different than it is today. And you valued running backs a lot more than you do now. We've seen Myles Garrett, a number one pick, has lived up to being a number one pick. We've seen that the Browns have made two playoff appearances in his time here. Um, I don't know. I don't know if and it's funny you're asking me this on a day when I kind of went back and watched a little. I actually watched the Abdul Carter game against Ohio State, and he had 2 sacks in that game, and he was really good. But Ohio State was running a ton of stuff away from him. They were doubling him. They were chipping him. I mean, you didn't see Abdul Carter on every single play like you do an elite quarterback. It's just easier. It's not easy, but it's easier to negate a great edge rusher. So, I mean, quarterback is the most important position. There's a reason these guys make one of these guys is going to make $300 million here soon, and that number is just going to keep going up and up and up. There's a reason that the Browns gave up 3 first-round draft picks and rolled the dice on Deshaun Watson. Like, it's just such an outsized the position is just an outsized importance in the game. So no, I don't think there is another position that impacts winning like quarterback.
And I did ask Jimmy Haslam this very question. I said, does a transformational player, not necessarily generational, because I think that is an overused term. We don't know yet if Travis Hunter is going to be generational. We don't know yet if Abdul Carter is going to be generational, but we know that they should be somewhat transformational. So I asked Jimmy Haslam that question. Does a transformational player, a surefire player, trump in your mind a quarterback who you're not sure about? And he said, I think that's fair to say. And you and I have talked about this. I think that we both feel that the quarterback that you're not 100% sure about trumps a transformational non quarterback. Because once again, if you don't have the quarterback, you are not going anywhere and you're not going to accomplish anything. Now, you have to have some conviction about the quarterback. But if you're not 100% sure about the quarterback, I think that's okay. I think you can still roll the dice and take that quarterback. And if it's not Shador, I'm cool with that. I mean, if you feel like it's Jackson Dart, and we talked about this yesterday, and you think that you can get him at number 3, and maybe the Giants would want to come up to number 2 or whatever the case may be, then take Jackson Dart at number 3. Or if you feel strongly that Tyler Shuck is going to be a quarterback of the future and a franchise quarterback that you can hang your hat on and he can take you to the playoffs, then go with him. And you can't get cute and wait till 33 for him. There's too many people that are getting onto him in the NFL world, not in the media world, but in NFL circles. There is some chatter going on behind the scenes about Louisville's Tyler Shuck. And somebody is going to be smart enough to take a chance on him, I think, at least in the later first round. So I don't think that you can get cute with that and think that you can get him at 33 overall. The league is catching on to him. There's something there. So I don't think that can happen. I mean, if you like him, go ahead and take him at number 2 or trade back to 3 or whatever. I'm not even sure you could go back to 6 or 9 and be assured of getting him there with the way the quarterback position is.
I still, this is a I'm proud of my own work moment. I still like my prediction from the pod a few weeks ago of What do the Rams do at 26 if a guy like Tyler Shook is there? I think they're at 26. I don't remember the exact number. And they know they need an heir apparent to Matthew Stafford in the next year or two. Like, you have to think about things like that too. Some of these teams that maybe you look at and say, well, they've got a starter. I mean, Atlanta showed us it doesn't matter if you have a starter. You're going to need somebody to replace that guy eventually, especially if your starter's old. So you gotta think about stuff like that too. And neither of us are saying like you just take a quarterback to take a quarterback. The prerequisite there is a level of belief in that guy. And I would take, if I'm 75% on Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders and 99% on Abdul Carter, I would take the quarterback in that position. But I will throw this at you, because the one thing I was thinking is, obviously in a vacuum, we're talking about Abdul Carter versus the quarterback. But what about the idea of pairing Abdul Carter with Myles Garrett and having what essentially could be the two of the best edge rushers in football?
That would be something. That really would be something to have those guys together. Now, I also have to wonder, they just committed an enormous sum of money to Myles Garrett, $40 million a year. He is your alpha dog. He is your alpha dog. I'm not 100% certain how he would respond or react to you bringing in basically what is your edge rusher of the future, your next Myles Garrett. It doesn't mean they wouldn't do it. I just wonder how that's going to fly if that happens. I don't know how that would go, but I'm still, and that, I mean, that would be amazing to have those two guys together. And I suppose if you knew that you were trading for Kirk Cousins this year and he was going to be your quarterback for the next 2 or 3 years, then maybe you do something like that. If you are going Kirk Cousins, and I know that your column was basically, don't do that. It's time to turn the page to a younger guy and move forward. And I see the wisdom in that too, if you see somebody there that you really like that. But perhaps they feel like they've got still a veteran roster with a lot of Pro Bowl guys on it. And if they want to go that Abdul Carter route and they know they're getting a Kirk Cousins for a third round pick and $10 million or $15 million or whatever it's going to be, then maybe you do that. And they have a plan. They have some kind of a strategy. I'm sure that something like that could possibly be on the table, as well as a lot of other things. But it might not be the craziest idea in the world to go that route.
Okay, let's stick with this draft scenario and this top of the draft. And this comes from Abe in Huntington, West Virginia. Hey, Mary Kay, do you think Andrew Berry's recent comments on Travis Hunter are foreshadowing for the draft, or rather another smokescreen? I'm used to AB saying nothing about everything. I will say AB has loosened up a little bit with us. So it's not always just saying absolutely nothing, but he did gush a lot about Travis Hunter.
Well, you can afford to do that when you have the number 2 overall pick. You can do that because they actually do have a legitimate shot to draft one of these guys. You know you're going to get Shador or Cam or Travis or Abdul if you stay where you're at. You know you can get one of these guys. So you can open it up a little bit. So I'm not too surprised about that. But I think that they have actually spoken in glowing terms of other players as well. This year, they have heaped some high praise on Shador. They have heaped some high praise on Cam and Jackson Dart and some of these other players, Abdul and Travis, a lot of these guys that they've had in for their top 30 visits and everything already. So I I don't think that too much can be read into it. But the interesting thing here is actually we are taping this on Wednesday afternoon. I'm going to Colorado's NFL showcase. I'm actually going to be there. What a unique opportunity this is. I haven't been to a pro day. I can't remember the last one that I was at, but I remember back in the day being at Ricky Williams' pro day. And I even had a stopwatch in my hand. And I had like scouts like showing me exactly how to hold the stopwatch and stuff. I went to
By the way, speaking of a time when like running backs were just considered totally different, right? I mean, the Ricky
yes.
Williams draft.
Right? So, yes, I was at that one. I was at Tim Couch's. I went over to Penn State for LeVar Arrington. I've been to a number of pro days, but I haven't been to one in a long, long time. For whatever reason, we didn't go to the Johnny Manziel pro day. We didn't go to the Baker Mayfield pro day, the Josh Allen pro day. I don't know why, but for some reason, somehow I was able to get approval on this one. And I'm really glad because actually it's 2 for 1. It is a 2 for 1 NFL showcase for the Cleveland Browns because, of course, you have Shador Sanders that's going to be there, and you also have Travis Hunter, and you will see them working together, which is going to be really cool. And then you've got Deion Sanders who's going to be there. I mean, this is going to be crazy to be at this thing, I think. So looking forward to it, looking forward to seeing what I can pick up there, what I can glean there. I'm sure all 32 teams will be there. Pat Shermer will be there, the former Browns coach. Uh, I'm very eager to see the Browns' interaction with Travis, with Shador. It's going to be very, very interesting. It's going to be. I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a fun trip, and this trip might go a long way towards them deciding who is coming to Cleveland at number 2 overall.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the last of the big pro days. I know they're not calling it a pro day, but it's a pro day. This is kind of the last of the big ones. I'm sure I don't know the exact schedule, but obviously Cam Ward has had his, Jackson Dart, Abdul Carter. All these guys have, all the bigger names have had their pro day. So this is kind of the last of at least the really big ones. So it seems like you go to this one and then they're going to hunker down and sit in that war room and hash all of this stuff out.
Yes. So what's happening after this pro day is next week is going to be a big week for those top 30 visits. As I've written before, Tyler Shuck is coming to town. Saw a report today that wide receiver Isaiah Bond is coming to town. So next week, there's going to be a flood of players coming into town, and we're going to be hearing and seeing those names fast and furious come through here because they haven't had a ton of those top 30 visits yet. So there will be a lot of those next week, and that will be telling too. I think we'll get a better idea of who they're looking at in some of those later rounds and what their strategy might be. But this is pretty big. And here's the other thing to keep in mind about what's happening in Colorado. I've written this a number of times. Kevin Stefanski admitted that they are having dinner with Shador. And I've come to find out that that's basically in lieu of a private workout. I don't think they feel that they need to do a private workout since they are doing this showcase and he's going to be right there throwing the ball in front of their eyes to Travis Hunter. I think they're going to see what they need to see right there. I also think that they will spend extra private time with Travis Hunter on this trip. It just makes sense. That's what they've been doing. And even Jimmy Haslam said that they were doing 2 on this trip. So probably 2 dinners or 1 dinner. I don't know how it's going to shake out, but they will spend time with both of these guys. And by the time that they're done, because both of them have already been in for their top 30 visits, that's pretty much going to be it. The only thing that they could decide to do is they could come home and say, no, we need to see Travis. I mean, Shador one more time. We need to see him or Travis. We need to see them work out privately. There's just something we have to get answered in our mind. Now, you can't do that in Cleveland. That has to be done in their territory. So it's got to be done at they'd have to go back out to Colorado if they decide they're going to do that. That's not in the cards right now. That's not lined up. Doesn't mean it won't be. They can do that all the way up till, I think they can do that all the way up till April 23rd. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe they'll decide to work someone else out. I wouldn't be surprised about that either. What if they want to go work out Tyler Shuck? I don't think they have a private setup with him right now, but if they want to, they can decide to do that. So there still is plenty of due diligence to be done, but certainly they're starting to wind down on some of it.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of those private workouts, I remember the Baker year. There was that story that came out about New England kind of scrambling to get one last private workout with Baker, like literally the week of the draft.
Mm-hmm.
So these things do happen. Okay, this is one you're gonna like because obviously you've thrown out your quarterback theory. Mike Parker in Chester, Maryland, has his quarterback plan here. He says, "Hey, Mary Kay, this might sound crazy, but I would seriously consider drafting 3 quarterbacks in the upcoming draft. Sanders in the first round, Dart in the second round, and even Milrow in the second round." He goes on to talk about the Commanders and basically saying drafting 3 quarterbacks would certainly improve the Browns' odds. You've advocated taking not just 2 quarterbacks, but maybe potentially taking 2 quarterbacks in the first round. Is 3 quarterbacks a bridge too far?
Now, this is a man after my own heart here.
I
My
knew you would. I
goodness.
knew you would like this question.
We should get on the phone and just talk about this for hours and hours. I love this. Look, at this time of year, I am all for crazy ideas, thinking outside of the box, and doing things that maybe no one else has done before. Why not? Just because everyone does things a certain way doesn't mean that you have to do it that way. You can do whatever works for you. And my crazy idea that got people so mad at me and had people wanting me to lose my job was the fact that I advocated Shador at number 2 and then trade back into the first round and take Tyler Shuck in the end of the first round. And I said that probably 3 weeks ago, and I still don't hate it, Dan. I still don't hate that idea. But three might be a bridge too far because you have to manage your quarterback room and you have to find a way to keep these guys. And you just can't keep too many quarterbacks on your roster. And you're not going to expose a high draft pick to waivers by keeping somebody on your practice squad like that. So I can see 2, but I think 3 might actually end up being a bridge too far unless you have a real developmental guy in a later round that nobody's going to come stealing off of your practice squad. So, but once again, like I said, I like when you think outside of the box and you don't do everything the way everybody else does, because think about this. The hit rate for quarterbacks, even in the first round, is, I believe, about 47%. So why not try something different and new?
I do endorse the idea of like at some point these NFL teams all they just need to get everybody in a room and just say, "Hey, throw every crazy idea you've got out there and nothing's off limits." So if you want to advocate drafting 3 quarterbacks on the first 2 days of the draft, throw it out there and we'll discuss it and maybe we'll throw that idea out. But I do think like the draft can be so groupthink and it can be so like I always joke with Lance Reisland, he'll send me draft stuff, and some of his draft thoughts where he has players ranked and things like that are completely different from what you see like draft experts. And sometimes he's right, sometimes he's wrong. But I love the idea of just kind of doing your own thing and like think you've got to think outside the box a little bit and try to avoid some of that groupthink around, well, we have to do it this way or we have to. So I'm all for like throw out any crazy ideas you've got, like throw them out there and maybe one of them will be like, you know what? That's not such a bad idea. Maybe we should look into that a little more.
Well, when you think about the fact that, and we've talked about some of these names before, that the San Francisco 49ers a couple of years ago traded up to draft Trey Lance, and it didn't work out. And then lo and behold, they end up drafting Brock Purdy in the 6th round the next year, and he works out. I mean, that needs to tell you right there that drafting quarterbacks is an inexact science. And then it's not just the drafting of the quarterback, it's everything that happens after you draft the quarterback. You've got to get him in the right system. You have to surround him with the right supporting cast. You have to make sure that that he's coached up correctly, that his mentals are good. I mean, there's so many things that go into it. And then did anybody give Lamar Jackson a chance in heck of becoming the 2-time NFL Player of the Year or NFL MVP? No, he was a total afterthought for teams in the first round of the draft. That's why I'm wondering now, what is Jalen Milrow going to turn out to be? He's actually had a really nice pre-draft experience after the Senior Bowl. He had a shaky Senior Bowl, and since then, he's done a really nice job. He ran a 4.37 at his pro day. His arm has looked amazing. And I think some team is going to look at him and say, what if we can turn this guy into the next Lamar Jackson? Somebody is probably going to do that. And maybe they'll nail it and maybe they'll be wrong. It's really, really hard to get it right and to project it. And then even when you think you're wrong and all is lost with some of these players, then they revive their careers. And Sam Darnold wins 14 games. And Baker Mayfield is the talk of the town in Tampa Bay. So it's that's why it's okay to throw out a crazy quarterback idea because it might not turn out to be as crazy as you think.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, so like with Jalen Milroe, I'm not a big Jalen Milroe fan. Like I don't like I didn't love what I saw at Alabama, but I'll tell you this: once he like it's a clean slate for me when he gets to the NFL, whether it's the Browns or someone else. I just think you have to give it a clean slate because you just never know. And we've seen enough situations where it's like, well, this guy's a sure thing and it doesn't work out. And this guy, oh my God, I can't believe they drafted Jalen Hurts, in the second round. What are they doing? And now Jalen Hurts, yes, a flawed player at times, but now he's been to two Super Bowls and he's won one, and he was the best quarterback on the field in this last one. He might have been the best quarterback in the field in the one that he lost. So, like, you just never know. So I try to always, whenever a player gets picked, whether it's by the Browns or someone else, I might think to myself, or I might say, oh, I didn't like that pick, or, I wasn't a big fan of that guy. But ultimately, it's like clean slate when you get to the NFL. Like, now let's see what you can do from here. And that's sort of how I am with Jalen Milroe. Didn't love it all at Alabama, but I'm not I'm not going to be the guy that if he gets picked, I'm pointing at the team that picks him and says, "Man, what a bunch of dummies."
Well, the other thing to consider here, Dan, and I think that we can cite a lot of examples of this. If you pair a certain quarterback with a certain brilliant offensive mind, beautiful magic can happen. When you put Sam Darnold with Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, voila, the magic comes out in Sam Darnold. When you pair Patrick Mahomes with Andy Reid, it's beautiful music, right? I think that has a lot to do with it. Josh Allen with Brian Daboll, it was the perfect match. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And even Lamar Jackson right now with Todd Monken, I mean, that's been a really, really good thing for him. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And what we don't know yet here is we do know that Tommy Reese, the Browns offensive coordinator, has worked with Jalen Milroe before. So we do have an idea of how that might go. But we don't really know what kind of an offensive mind he's going to prove to be in the NFL yet. I hear really great things about him, and I can't wait to see how it's going to shake out. And I think Bill Musgrave is an excellent, excellent coach. So I'm very curious to see how these guys do with the new quarterback. And we know that Kevin has brought out the best in many, many, many quarterbacks. So maybe they will strike lightning in a bottle or catch lightning in a bottle with whatever quarterback they pick and with this offensive team that they have going right now. I think that has so much to do with the success or failure of these young quarterbacks.
All right, here's a completely random. This was one of my Browns fans are back questions. So was the three quarterback question, but this one comes from A Rob in Des Moines. Hey, Mary Kay. If Sonny Weaver Jr. were running the Browns and holding the number 2 pick in this year's draft, what kind of wild draft day move would he pull? Is there a Vontae Mack type prospect worth taking no matter what? Or would Sonny shock the world with a trade that leaves us scrambling to make sense of it? Of course, for those of you who don't remember or haven't heard us talk about it on the pod, Mary Kay was actually in the movie Draft Day, except I believe you ended up on the cutting room floor.
I did end up on the cutting room floor, and I like to say that it was my love scene with Kevin Costner that ended up on the cutting room floor. Okay, it wasn't exactly a love scene. I was walking back and forth at a gas station, but Kevin was there the whole entire time. So I was technically filmed in a scene with him there. It just didn't make the movie. Isn't that
And
sad?
and that gas station was right across the river from our old cleveland.com offices too. I frequented that gas station a lot
Oh,
when we were down in the flats.
well, you probably saw me filming that day.
Probably, maybe I did. I don't know.
You
I might
probably did.
have.
It was like 8 hours of just walking back and forth to into the gas station and out of the gas station. And but no, that was great fun. I got to go in into one of the trailers where you get the wardrobe trailer, whatever. And I had my makeup done and everything. It was a very fun day. Very, very fun day. I just wish that my little scene would have made the movie, because then
I mean,
there would be some evidence that I actually did this.
Joe Banner was in the movie. Like, I can't believe that somehow you didn't make. I don't know. I think it's an outrage.
It is an outrage. I should be in the movie, but nevertheless, it was fun to be able to film it. Anyways, I kind of forgot about that. That was great fun. So, what would Sonny Weaver do? Oh, that's a good question. I almost forget.
I feel like this is actually a pro Abdul Carter argument, right? Because he was all about, like, he was looking at the quarterback and there were questions about the quarterback, and he was like, nope, we're taking Vontae Mack, who was a linebacker, I think, which is a whole
Yes,
other discussion. But
yes.
he's like, no, Vontae Mack, no matter what. I feel like this is almost an argument for the Abdul Carter crowd, that they all have their Abdul Carter, no matter what, post-it notes.
It could be. I'm going to have to go back. We should do a watch party. That would be a funny pod,
We
right?
did. We did do a. Me, Doug, and Scott did a rewatch one summer. I think when you were off. I don't think Ashley was on the beat yet. But yeah, we should actually do like another rewatch of Draft Day.
Yeah, I mean, we could do something where we're actually watching the movie and talking about it and stopping it and analyzing it. That would maybe something like that would be kind of funny. But yeah, this could be a case for Abdul Carter. I could see Sonny Weaver doing that. I'm thinking Sonny Weaver would just stay right there and take Abdul Carter.
That's kind of how I feel too. And then, like, didn't he make a big trade too? Didn't he like trade up and take a running back or something? He did something. He did something weird.
I can't
He
even
took.
remember.
I mean, the whole gist of the movie, he uses like the number one pick on a linebacker, and then he trades up to take a running back. It was very, it was the Browns in that movie did not have a very analytics driven front office. I think it's
Yeah,
safe to say that.
and I remember watching the movie and thinking, oh, they really should have consulted with some of the actual beat writers of the Cleveland Browns to make sure that they were getting everything factually correct and realistic on how these things would go. But yeah, that was fun. It was fun. I got to meet Jennifer Garner. I have a picture just with Jennifer, so that's kind of cool. And Kevin Costner did interact with me and my scene mate from that day for a minute and talked to us for a little bit. I mean, not, it was like 2 words, but yeah, that was great fun.
Okay, one more. This one comes from Jeff Sapisi in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. So we'll wrap this up with a little Kenny Pickett propaganda. Hey, Mary Kay, about Kenny Pickett. He was 7-5 and 7-5 in both his 2 seasons with the Steelers, even with Matt Canada as his OC. Given that Canada was fired about 2/3 of the way through, could the argument be made that Pickett never had the chance to truly develop? He was also sacked a lot, so he probably didn't have the best line. I know you want the Browns to draft a quarterback at 2, but could Pickett be better than his time in Pittsburgh shows? And I do think like that's the argument for Kenny Pickett is all we did was talking about Matt Canada and how bad that Steelers offense looked. I mean, he didn't play a ton in Philadelphia, so we didn't really get to see he had like one spot start. Maybe there is something there that we haven't gotten to see yet.
I think that is the line of thinking of the Cleveland Browns, that when they get him into their system, which, as we know, it hasn't worked out lately, but as we know, quarterbacks usually fare very, very well in this quarterback friendly system. And they see in Kenny Pickett someone who can excel in this kind of a system, the Kevin Stefanski system. So I do think that that is part of the thinking, that once he gets in this scheme with this offensive line and these skill players and a renewed commitment to the running game and a good defense, that he's going to fare much better. And he actually wasn't horrible. I mean, he did go 14-10 in Pittsburgh, and he went 7-5 in 2023 to help lead them to a wild card berth in the playoffs before he suffered an ankle injury. So I do think that they believe that there is more to Kenny than he's been able to show so far, and they believe they're going to bring it out in him.
I mean, it's interesting, and he might end up being your week one starter. So even if they draft a rookie at number 2, so um, you take a shot on a guy like that, see what happens, and I don't, I don't know. We'll have a lot of time to talk about Kenny Pickett. We'll get to see him a lot in May when OTAs start and mini camp starts and all that stuff. So we're going to get a lot of Kenny Pickett talk coming up here. So that will do it for this edition of the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. Find us on YouTube, Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com. We put most of our pods up there in video format. Also, going to try something on Thursday night. So Tim and Lance are coming back to start their draft pods. We'll be running those every Friday up until the draft. I'm going to try to go live on Thursday night at 6 o'clock on our YouTube channel. I've tested it. I think it works. So I'm not going to 100% promise anything because it'll be our first shot at it. But Cleveland Browns on cleveland.com, our YouTube channel, going to try and go live tomorrow night, Thursday night at 6 o'clock with Tim and Lance talking quarterbacks. So you'll certainly want to get a chance to see that as it happens. We're on Instagram, Orange and Brown Talk, Twitter, Orange Brown Talk. And of course, make sure you subscribe to this podcast, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Mary Kay, I'll talk to you later.
Sounds great.